It's time for overtime. We are going to get to this week's slate of games in PLL. They are out in San Diego this week. They were in Baltimore last week. I got to get down there for a couple of games. And Devin, I wanted to get your impressions of this before we break these games down. Watching from the field level, and I've seen lacrosse my whole life, been around lacrosse my whole life, but just the speed and the dexterity, and it's just different live than on TV. You know, people say it about hockey. I think it's the same thing with lacrosse. From what was your experience like covering the league, and just how much of an appreciation did you gain for what these guys are able to do?
Oh my gosh, I fell in love with lacrosse. So some quick background. I actually I was like the host and in-league producer for the National Lacrosse League, which is actually box lacrosse. And it's really like, I'm from outside Philadelphia, as Baltimore is like a very large, lacrosse hotbed, but for outdoor lacrosse. So I wasn't too familiar with box lacrosse. You bring up hockey, like box lacrosse is essentially like NHL on turf. Like they play, in the same arenas, but it's much more Canadian, where down here we play the PLL, style of field lacrosse, which is a bigger field, much less physical, but still just an incredible game. And it's really cool to watch these players like cross over. So it's the same athletes a lot of times will play in both leagues. So that's how I got involved with the PLL, and I sideline reported for the PLL for a bit. And just watching what these guys can do, like the diving goals, if you really look at the size of the goal and the size of the goaltenders, and the way these guys are able to even score it's just incredible. And you really gave me a newfound appreciation for the sport, both indoor and outdoor. And it's just been really fun to see it continue to grow. I mean, the PLL just made a massive announcement today. Like they're going to, stay on ESPN for another, I think it's like 5 years. ESPN is investing more in it. So it's an awesome time to be into lacrosse.
And it's a great time to bet lacrosse. And if you go to the PLL website, they're starting to dabble more and more in advanced stats and the kind of advanced analytics that we use to inform our bets in these other sports. So that's where the trend's going. And where have the trends been in the PLL this year? Underdogs 13-3 against the spread. And last week, all 4 games went over. So we'll start with the first game of the weekend. And again, everything's out in San Diego. We've got Denver at the Redwoods. Some interesting trends in this one. This is the only game so far where the teams have already met. California won the first meeting 15-12, but Denver's playing better lax now. And they've won 2 in a row. Home field, how much will it matter? How much won't it matter? The Whipsnakes were at home in what I call Mesopotamia, Homewood Field, Johns Hopkins University. And they couldn't hold serve in the first game, did win the second game against lowly Carolina. I'm not sure how much it matters here. I like Denver in a bounce back spot here. I lean to Denver on the money line. Ben, anything that caught your eye about this matchup?
I just took a prop. Chris Kavanaugh over 1.5 goals scored at -150. He's over 2 of his last 3. Facing his brother, maybe, right? He's dealing with an injury, but it's questionable, so we'll see if he plays. And Rookie of the Year matchup, like McNaney caught him in the odds, right? +300 for McNaney now. He's a Terp. We're big Terps fans here. But Kavanaugh's +450. He's got to start putting it on a little bit. It's a home game for the Redwoods, playing in San Diego. Should be tuned up. So I do think he goes over 1.5 goals.
Anything, Devin?
Yes, sorry, I muted myself because my dog is misbehaving.
Oh no, we love dogs, so we're all
big dog fans.
Let that dog go.
I apologize for that.
No, we want the dog.
Yeah, so I like the Outlaws here. So when I covered the PLL, the Outlaws weren't even a team yet. They were in the MLL, which then the 2 leagues kind of merged. And I know that Denver is also surprising, lacrosse hotbed, even though I know that they are in California's, home state this weekend. I'm still going to go with Denver -105 here against the Redwoods.
Yeah, I like the way Denver got their offense cranked up in the second half of that game last week against a really good Utah offense. So our defense, I should say. So I think that could hold for us there. Second game of the weekend. I just mentioned Utah. We got Utah and the New York Atlas. Atlas pulling upset last week. Utah, if you're looking at the trends, 0-4 against the spread. The Atlas have won 5 of the 7 meetings between these teams. I kind of like the under here. If you look at their last 7 meetings, 6 have gone under. This number at 23.5, it's not as low as the 21.5 that we saw in the Utah game last weekend. 2 goals, a big deal in this league. And I just look at Utah, what they've been able to do defensively. They're only allowing 10 per game. Was last week a bit of an anomaly with the Atlas. I think that's a team that's probably going to end up playing more low scoring games. So I lean to the under here. Ben?
Yeah, I like the under too. You can actually get it at 24.5 on DraftKings and minus 115. 23.5 is plus money. But since 2020, the under is 6-1 in these matchups. I know there's different players and everything, of course, but we're seeing 2 of the best goalies in the league, Dobson and Entenmann. So Entenmann leads the league in saves with 69, and Dobson's second in save percentage. Archers are under in all 4 games this season. I think they're going to try and force the Atlas to play their style. So I do like the under here.
I'm going to make myself sound like a grandma with this statement, but I remember when Dobson was drafted and he just seemed so young, and it was during, I think it was a COVID year. So he was drafted, but then didn't play immediately. So it's crazy to hear that he's one of the best goalies in the league.
Yeah.
I don't really have anything specific on this, but I'll go with my guy Dobson. Sure.
Nice.
I'll tail Ben.
Yeah. We'll look. More props will populate through the week. We'll see what it might be one for Friday. Maybe I'll take a look at his saves props. Need to do a little more work there. All right, now we go to the second day of play. Obviously, if you're not familiar with the league, so the host team is going to play twice this weekend. So we've got Philadelphia, Devon's Water Dogs, against California, and so far. The trend has been the team that's got to play twice in a weekend has struggled. Now, the Whip Snakes bucked that trend last week, but again, they did it on a Sunday in extreme heat against a Carolina team that just didn't really look like they were ready to play. Look, I like the Water Dogs here. Watching that game last weekend from field level, I was kind of a little bit astonished. Philadelphia's shot selection, they were second to a lot of ground balls. They were second to they just were second best. And I don't know if they thought they were just they were gonna win. They were the favorites. They don't really cover. And they are a favorite again here. But I do think it could be tough for California to play back-to-back games. This Philadelphia team is 0-5 against the spread, against California all time, and they've never beaten them. I don't know. That seems like a trend that's not going to last forever to me. I think they'll find a way to get Sowers, who was the leading scorer in the league going into last weekend, going. He looked like he was having trouble kind of finding his happy place against that New York team last week, but I don't think that's a trend that's going to continue. And I think Philadelphia, rather than settling for outside shots that really had no chance to work and just gave possession away, I think they'll protect the ball a little bit and be a little bit smarter about how they approach this. So I'm going to take the Water Dogs on the money line. Ben? And this is my play of the week. This is my official PLL. Helmet doesn't fit my fat head, but I'll put it on anyway. Play of the week.
No, yeah, but just like last week, we're on a lot of the same stuff. I do like the Water Dogs on the money line. I think they're the better team. Talked about Sowers, probably the best player in the league. He's going to win MVP. And again, you mentioned the trend, right? Last week was the first time we saw a homecoming team win game 2, which I was on the Whip Snakes, which was a nice plus money cash, I believe. But I do think that the Water Dogs handle business here at minus 134.
Look, I hope my Philadelphia Water Dogs can start getting it together because they had a rough go last season as well. They're doing better this season. You mentioned that Michael Sowers, local kid, and just an awesome attack in the PLL and for the Water Dogs. So I agree. I mean, the Redwoods are playing back-to-back games like you mentioned, Jason. I like the Water Dogs minus 1.5. I'm going to take the spread here. I think that they can cover that. It's only 2 points. I like it.
I thought about it, but that 13-3 dogs against the spread talked me out of it. But
I know,
you'll probably be right because I chickened out. Final game of the weekend. I don't have a play on this one. It's pretty extreme here, the matchup, right? You're getting a Boston team that, if you look at the futures odds, they're still the favorites to win the league, and you got a Carolina team that's plus 2,200 to win the league and seem to be fading. Carolina's got a minus 19 goal differential already, but you've got to lay 2.5 here. And again, in a league that whatever we want to say about the haves and the have-nots, the dogs are where the money's been. So I couldn't get there. I mean, I thought about an under. It didn't do a whole lot for me. mean, Carolina lost 20-6. Does that inspire them to come back a little bit more? Play tougher. I'm sure they had a tough week of practice coming off that outing last weekend. And they had a bye the week before that. So you thought you might have seen a little better than them. I couldn't get home on anything here, Ben. What about you?
Yeah, I'm actually going with the Cannons, but I'm going -1.5. Like if you shop these lines between FanDuel and DraftKings, you can find different stuff. But it's -134. You mentioned all of it. Like Carolina's coming off a 14-goal loss. In the same weekend, they lost to the Whipsnakes, where Boston beat the Whipsnakes. So look at that matchup there. Carolina's 1-3 with all 3 losses coming by 2 goals or more. Just think the Cannons are a much better team. And again, I know not many teams are covering 1.5, but I do think the Cannons handle business as a top 2 team in this league.
I like the Cannons. I agree. I mean, it's quite the difference, which is crazy to say because when I covered, it was the semifinals. The Chaos were like one of the best teams in the PLL. And a big reason for that was because, like I mentioned, you know, the crossover between leagues, they had some of the best Canadian players playing for them. And I know a few of those Canadian players have gotten older and have either retired or chosen, you know, not to play anymore in the PLL or in a specific league. So that certainly hurt them. They still have Blaze Reardon as their goaltender. Love Blaze. Have to shout out him. It is rough to give up, you know, 20 goals and lose 20-6. So it's just hard for me to get behind the Chaos right now, even though I have always been a secret Chaos fan.
Wow.
I have to go with the Cannons.